Hi, Mr. Kang. Today, me and Yunji would like to teach you what we know from chapter 7.1. So the guideline for today's video will be a practical introduction to hypothesis testing, how to state a null hypothesis and an alternative hypothesis, how to identify type 1 and type 2 errors and interpret the level of significance, how to know whether to use a one-tailed or two-tailed statistical test and finding a p-value, how to make and interpret a decision based on the results of statistical test, how to write a claim for this test. Okay, first of all, in a hypothesis test first means a process that uses sample statistics to test a claim about the value of a population parameter. So basically, to test a population parameter, you should carefully state a pair of hypotheses represents its complement. When one of these hypotheses is false, the other must be true. Either the null hypothesis or the alternative hypothesis may represent the original claim. So what is a null hypothesis? The definition is basically h to the 0 is a statistical hypothesis that contains a statement of equality, such as this. You know what this is? Less than the alligator sign, equal to, or bigger than. The alternative hypothesis, HA, is a complement of the null hypothesis. It is a statement that must be true if h to 0 is false and it contains a statement of strict inequality. So a real life example from what I just told you about could be, say suppose a doctor claims that a 17-year-old have an average body temperature that is higher than the commonly accepted average human temperature of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. A simple random statistical sample of 25 people, each of age 17, is selected. The average temperature of the 17-year-old is found to be 98.9 degrees, with standard deviation of 0.6 degrees. The second objective, types of error and level of significance. So first of all, you must begin with a hypothesis test by assuming that the equality condition in the null hypothesis is true. So there's two decisions that you have to make. The first one, reject the null hypothesis, or the second one, fail to reject the null hypothesis. Because your decision is based on a sample, you can make wrong assumptions. The only way to be absolutely certain whether HO null hypothesis is true or false is to test the entire population. So I will tell you the definition. A type 1 error occurs only if the null hypothesis is rejected when it is true. A type 2 error is the null hypothesis is not rejected when it is false. So it is possible that one might reject the null hypothesis when it is actually true, because your sample statistic is determined to be an unusual event in the sampling distribution. You can decrease the probability of doing so by lowering the level of significance. So what does lowering the level of significance mean? So the definition of level of significance is your maximum allowable probability of making a type 1 error. So a commonly used number is A equals to 0.1, A equals to 0.05, or A equals to 0.01. So an example that is real life could be, what if you flip the coin 100 times and get 21 heads, 79 tails? It would be a rare occurrence to get only 21 heads out of 100 tosses with a fair coin. So you probably have sufficient evidence to support your claim that the coin is not fair. The third objective would be statistical test and p-values. So test statistics. Statistics that is compared with the parameter in the null hypothesis. If the null hypothesis is true, a p-value of a hypothesis test is the probability of obtaining a sample statistic with a value as extreme or more extreme than the one determined from the sample data. So if the alternative hypothesis contains a less than inequality symbol, the hypothesis test is a left-tailed test. If the alternative hypothesis contains the greater than inequality symbol, it is a right-tailed test. If the alternative hypothesis contains the not equal to symbol, it is a two-tailed test. Making a decision and interpreting the decision. Decision rule based on the p-value. To use a p-value to make a conclusion in a hypothesis, compare the p-value with A. If p is smaller than or equal to A, then reject the null hypothesis. If p is bigger than, then fail to reject the null hypothesis. Failing to reject the null hypothesis means that there is not enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis. So the fourth objective is strategies for hypothesis testing. The strategy that you will use in hypothesis testing should depend on whether you are trying to support or reject a claim.